So starting the test drive in this Bronco Sport Badlands, pretty quick. But one thing I find interesting is this reminds me of being behind the wheel of my Mach-E, just from how the steering wheel's set up, the screen is, but mostly where that hood is. The hood is right in my face and it looks great, especially in this orange, but it's just probably more intrusive than most people would want in a vehicle like this. But if you're getting it to use it like a Subaru competitor as it should be used, then that probably won't bother you that much. But I definitely love this 2-liter EcoBoost as opposed to the 1.5 I drove in, I believe that was in Outer Banks a month or so ago. And with the paddle shifters, you can put it into manual mode and you can actually use it, or you can just all of a sudden start shifting if you want to just start downshifting, and then hold the plus key and then it'll go back to regular automatic mode. And I did forget to mention the manual tilt telescope handles right here. I'm going to use that. Now, you're not supposed to do that while you're driving, but I want to just be able to see a little bit better what's in front of me. But overall, ride quality is pretty good. I like the driving dynamics of the vehicle overall for what it is. Now, like in my Mustang Mach-E, one of the pet peeves I have is having too many rotary shift knobs as opposed to like an actual shifter. So I'll be reaching here, and I did it a few seconds ago. I caught myself grabbing the shifter when I was trying to switch drive modes, but then I called myself the last second and I was like, yeah, this is the one you're supposed to be in right here. So I want to shift it from normal to sport. And of course it starts to rev a little higher. And when I put my foot down, pulls very nicely. Now I don't want to give it too much throttle with this EcoBoost just because it only has about 17 miles on it. Now the turbo puts in a lot of work, which I like. Especially if you're just giving it mid-throttle, then all of a sudden you put your foot down a little bit more. You'll feel that turbo usually before you feel the transmission want to shift, which is just great. But I'm going to put it back in the normal mode, and then I'm going to put it in the Eco after I get on the interstate. Again, I don't want to drive this thing too hard. But a pretty quick engine. And it really shines when you're putting your foot down as opposed to the 1.5. And the 1.5, in my opinion, is a pretty peppy engine, specifically in this Bronco Sport. But the 2-liter, of course, just takes it to another level. Now for the price point, again, with a premium package, which I don't want to say I wouldn't recommend, but if you're definitely wanting to save all the money you can, I don't think you'll miss it, as opposed to maybe getting some aftermarket speakers or even just the stock system of the Bronco Sport. For the vast majority of people getting this vehicle, it'll probably be more than enough. But for this amount of money, you do get a lot of capability for a small SUV. Of course, you have the 2-liter as opposed to the 1.5. The 8-speed shifts pretty nicely, and then all the tech that you get standard with the Badlands trim is pretty great. But of course you could probably just get a Jeep Wrangler Sport for a little bit more money. But if you're looking for something like this, again, if you're wanting to get something similar to a comparable Subaru, pretty good option, especially having a 2-liter turbo engine as opposed to the 2.5 naturally aspirated ones that you get in the majority of Subaru's vehicles. And honestly, even the 1.5, now you do get your standard all-wheel drive with the Subarus, but the standard 2.5 that you get in those, I just rather have the 1.5 turbo from this. Now reliability might be something that might want to be looked at with these turbocharged engines, because it's just one more thing you have to fix having a turbo, but it just depends on what you're wanting to do. because I always recommend getting a warranty. And this one has a lifetime powertrain, and I believe the turbos are covered under that. Let's give it some throttle here. But again, I love how aggressive and beefy this one sounds as opposed to the 1.5 EcoBoost. It just feels like a V6. From the acceleration to the sound you get. And I forgot to mention the blind spot monitors. Those come in handy as well with a vehicle like this, specifically in traffic like this that you'll probably find yourself in. As you can see, it's lighting up there. But I just like having all this tech here. The only thing that's missing for me is adaptive cruise with lane centering. Now you do get a lane keeping system here, but it's more of a lane departure as opposed to a lane centering. And I just prefer the lane centering system personally, especially on longer road trips where you're just sitting here cruising. But again, in terms of competition, you have Subaru, I think, to an extent. I think more directly you have the Jeep Cherokee, the Jeep Renegade, those kind of vehicles there. But I think this is a pretty solid option. But again, for the money, maybe you don't need a trim level like this. Maybe the 1.5 is good enough. It depends on preference. And the great thing about the Bronco Sport is you have plenty of options in terms of how you want to configure your vehicle. And with all that being said, this will bring me to the end of my review of this 2023 Bronco Sport Badlands.